when you're a kid, which I was, as a child actor, started when I was like 11, 12. So you always, but particularly, as a girl, you always look at the women around you that you're working with. And for me, I really looked not just at the actresses who I admired their performances, but also who I admired their lives, right? That as a prototype of how to actually, be an actress, not just and succeed and do good work, but actually have all the things you want, have a great marriage and have a great, family life and children, and that you actually prioritize. And so there is no actress that I've worked with in all my 45 years that I think does that better than Christine.
Thank you so much for being here today. I'm loving the enthusiasm so far. I'm so excited. Thank you to the cast for being here today. I'd love to start off with, how did you originally get involved with this project and what drew you to the script? We'll start with Denée and work our way down.
I got an email from my agent that said, hey, you have an audition. And I know everyone wants like a mysterious story, but no offers yet.
We got to keep it real, yeah.
And I was saying I was drawn to this role because I felt like I got faced with this character in the 1800s who really reminded me of myself, which is really rare as a Black actor with the stories that can make it to the mainstream. And I played a lot of characters that were sort of an upper middle class, aristocratic 1800s woman, but never getting to do it written with the intention to be played by a Black woman. And so seeing Peggy, it was like, oh my gosh, I have to. And
absolutely.
So I was thankful that
we're glad you did.
Yeah.
Yes.
I also got an email from my agent. I was doing a play. I had just graduated drama school and I was doing a play in San Diego. And I got the email and it was like, Julian Fellowes has written essentially an American Downton Abbey. Takes place in New York in the 1880s, and we want you to read for the role of Marion. And obviously I was like really excited about that because I love Julian Fellowes and I love Downton Abbey a lot. I was a big fan of that show, and so I auditioned 3 times and I got it. Yeah, so that's the story.
I went in for a revival of Fiddler on the Roof, and I walked into the wrong room. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, same. I auditioned, and I was one of those things where I felt very skeptical that I could fit into Julian's world because I was familiar with Downton Abbey, and then sort of sat down and started playing with the material, and actually just sort of was like, oh, it's very inviting to an actor. It actually sort of asks you to just relax and enjoy yourself. I think there's a lot of pleasure for the audience in Julian's world, but there's also a lot of pleasure offered to an actor in his stuff. So once I started to sort of experience that about it, then I was like, oh, maybe this can play. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm very nervous in this chair. I feel like I'm just going to topple right back. So I don't know. I think I got maybe an email, maybe a phone call. I think my folks were really excited, and they described it a little bit to me, and they send me these scripts. And I was a big Julian Fellowes fan also, and Christine's name was floated by me as that they were trying to get her for Agnes, but because she's on the other show, they were not sure that they could work out her schedule. So I texted Christine right away, and she kept me, hopeful, but said it was, might going to be tricky. So I just sat and held my breath, but I said yes anyway, because I just thought it was an exciting opportunity. As an American actor, you really don't get to do period on film very much. And I know from personal experience that when you do a show in New York, particularly a show like this that's so big, that has so many juicy characters, that you're going to get, the greatest actors anywhere. So I signed right up, and I just kept waiting to hear about Christine. It all worked out.
I was actually taking out the recycling to my garage. I got this call that I had gotten tentative offer to do, play this role, but that it was contingent on various corporate forces, sharing me between two shows. So that was an elongated process. And but I had years before known that Julian was wanting to write an American version of Downton Abbey, and it was a dream of mine that if he ever did it, that I would be in it. And then, of course, Cynthia texted me, and I said, yes, it's true. Oh, my gosh, wouldn't it be wonderful if we were together? So a lot of really happy endings here, and continued, happy experiences on this show.
And getting to play sisters. It's great. Now look at you.
I was doing Bug at Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago. And then there was a pandemic, and the play shut down. And Tracy and I said, oh, the theater's over. And then my agents called and said, HBO would like to give you a job. And I said, yes, I should probably take that job. What is it? And then I said, wait, no, really, what is it? And who's doing it? And then it was Christine and Cynthia and Morgan. They were all signed on. And I read it. And Bertha is really formidable. And I'd never been invited to play, period, on TV and film. I'd been doing it in the theater, of course, but I'd never done it in TV and film. And I was really curious about exploring that time in history because I like it. And I really don't say no to a job, really. Just don't say no to a job.
Yeah, sometimes it's that simple. Absolutely. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but when it comes to doing a period piece, you have costumes, you have sets, and you have dialect coaching that helps you drop into the world. And I'd love for each of you to share, and we'll start with Carrie and go back to Denée, of what moment for you kind of dropped you into this Gilded Age world.
I'm not sure that I have. Well, I was saying this we were doing a Q&A earlier, and I find that because the language of the piece is really heightened, and you're wearing all the trappings that you're familiar with wearing in the theater, but there's a camera 6 inches from your face, that my instinct is always going to be a little bigger than what is being asked of me. But as I think Morgan's spoken very eloquently about this, you also can't be too small because you have to be very forward in that language. You can't just sit back and mumble like we do now in movies. And so it's a really fine balance, and I'm not certain I have struck it yet, but I'm still trying. I'm going to keep trying. That's what you do. Otherwise, we would quit. If you got it 100%, you would stop.
I would love to get it 100%.
Amen.
Personally.
Yeah. Not there.
Yeah, no, I agree with Carrie. It's such a challenge. But I have to say, when you talk about just what dropped me in that world once I knew I was cast, was reading or rereading Edith Wharton, because she's just spot on in terms of what the social mores of the time were, and these, particularly the women, and what's at stake for women in that world. And so Edith Wharton was just such a gift. And Julian Fellows just worships Wharton, so that was a great way in.
I guess I would say that, the script as originally written, we had very, very many scenes between Agnes and I before Marion showed up. Debating whether she would show, Agnes being skeptical about it, me being excited about it and persistent, and it was all cut. It was basically all cut. But so we led more right into the part where Marion and Peggy are showing up. And so we had that scene, which is one of kind of the first scenes of the series, where not only does Marion show up, but I, the actress and the person, had done all of those scenes of anticipating and lobbying and scheming, and it was so incredible that she had actually shown up, and then that she had brought Peggy with her, and that we learned very quickly that Peggy had been educated at this institution that our father was a benefactor of. And this was like Ada's dreams beyond her wildest imagining. And so when she made this connection, not only with Marion, but with Peggy, she laughed. and she giggled. And it's not scripted, but I felt like that was a moment for me when it really, you know, this is a person who spent her life being sort of cowed and careful and beaten down, but that all of a sudden these worlds are opening and that they're not only new, but they're coming full circle back to her childhood. And it was that kind of a moment that in this world of propriety, that actually Ada could step out and be inappropriate and giggly.
Wow, love that.
I guess I'm not. I don't know about dropping in. Like when early on, we had that. There was like that day where we had to eat soup, and they were like, "No, you can't use." I'm left-handed. And they're like, "You can't use your left hand. You have to use your right hand because
Morgan
no one
always
would've
eats
been
bread."
left-handed."
Were there no
So I was
left-handed
like,
people in the Gilded Age though?
I was like, I'm eating soup. This is all I'm doing. So I don't know. It took a minute to physically drop in, but I do. There was a piece of there's a piece of research that actually really connected me to the world, because I think initially I was like, yeah, these people are dynamic. It's very exciting. There's a lot of power, but like, why are we doing this? Like, why do we give a shit about these people? And there's this great book called King Lear and the Gilded Age by you got Elizabeth Drexel. Is that her name?
Yes, she was my late husband's aunt,
Whoa.
Aunt Bessie.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, I've not told you that?
No.
Oh my God.
Oh
yeah.
wow. You know, she's an amazing writer. I think she's an amazing writer. Like, I think it's an incredibly moving piece. Anyway, it's sort of about this book. Like, it's a very sad story of a woman who is tricked into marrying a fortune hunter, basically. But she describes this sort of social milieu in incredible detail. And what comes across is just how eccentric and weird these people were, and how like they were trying so hard to outdo each other by spending money on these lavish parties. And there's only so many times you can't just like up the ante with money. Eventually, you start having to have it on horseback, or have it there has to be a Russian count there or something like that. And it just got the idea that this was this incredibly rarefied world. That was like truly, truly strange, I think made me feel like, okay, there's something to this. This is actually fascinating. And so that helped me relax and just enjoy the show a little bit. Yeah. Sorry, I went on.
I don't care. Go on. I don't think I was dropped in season 1. I think in some moments I was, but I now that we're almost done with season 2, I feel an immense. I actually know what it feels like to drop in. I had never worked on a TV set before in my life, so I was so terrified the entire time. But something this year that has helped me drop in, like Morgan said, is a piece of research, and also Edith Wharton. There's something really specific that Marion has going on in season 2. And a friend of mine, I had told her about it, and a friend of mine messaged me this thing on Instagram about a woman who had a very, very similar thing going on. And before I saw that, I sort of maybe judged Marion's thing that she had going on as this like whatever, kind of silly thing. But then I thought, oh my God, like a woman like Marion existed. Like sometimes all it takes to make period real is to actually, this sounds so simple, but it's just to remember that these human beings actually existed. I know it's so obvious, but sometimes when you're doing it, you're like playing an idea of the past. And actually, if you just remember that they did exist and their ghosts are here right now, like, I don't know. I tapped into something when I had that piece of research. And since then, I've just been able to really be a human being and be active. And yeah, that's my piece.
That's beautiful.
They heard me answer this already, but I just, the props department is my MVP. I feel like with TV, there can be just such an energy of like you're just trying to get the shot and you're trying to get a lot done in a day, and there's so many moving pieces in our show that as an actor you kind of can just be like in get it right mentality versus a drop in and breathe mentality. And there were details like on one day on set I had a first edition of Frederick Douglass's autobiography, and it's like you can't help but drop in when that happens. And I remember your ring from season 1, if you don't mind me sharing. You know, the character's father or mother had died and father had died, and so Props had given her this ring that it's antique, and it had some hair woven into it because it was something that people would do to like carry their loved ones with them.
It was like a mourning ritual.
Yes.
Yeah, they would have jewelry pieces with hair inside of it.
And as an actor, you like, it's just, it makes it feel really spiritual and beautiful. And I remember them telling us like, oh, this isn't just costume jewelry. Like this is a real piece that
antiques.
they were able to source. And so those things have been really helpful for me.
Shout out to Props.
Shout out.
Shout out to Props. Yeah, honestly, the level of detail is
astounding.
insane. It's really.
And y'all were scheduled to start filming and production at the top of March 2020. That's what I've learned, correct? I wonder what
didn't
happened then. And so y'all obviously pushed back production, but I'd love to know, because I think for actors and arts workers across the spectrum of the industry, we're so impacted by the pandemic and the devastating effects of it. So I'd love to know from y'all, as actors, as artists, as people, how did that pause, how did that time away impact your approach once you guys started production? Whoever would like to start that deep question is free to start.
I mean, for Peggy's character, it gave us time to really reimagine very, very important things about how that character got to show up to the world, how we got to handle really important conversations around gender and race, and from the way my costumes looked compared to the rest of the characters, having time to really look at all of the just political ramifications of some of those choices, and work with the creative team and bring on different Black women who had the resources to be able to get Peggy to where she needed to be in our story. And so it were things that we were already working towards as a collective, but that time with the pandemic really just gave time. I think time is the biggest thing in our industry, is that, you know, there's so much money and there's so much you're trying to get done that it was kind of a blessing in disguise for at least my role and some of the characters we got to add to the show, like T. Thomas Fortune and the Globe. All of those things were birthed out of that time. And
you were very active in the like recreation process of that, right?
In those conversations, for sure. Yeah. And then just getting to have time for that back and forth. It's not things that you can just fix with a Band-Aid. And so those 4 extra months made a big difference for the Peggy that we got to see.
Yeah, no, I was just going to thank you, because I know that's like extra work that as an actor you put in, because that's, you know, you're here to act, but you also do this extra advocacy work that I think is very admirable.
Thank you. It was, you know, it's easy when you really care. It was like, because of the Peggy that was already there, it was like, oh, she can blossom even more. And so, yeah.
Absolutely. Who else?
Well, we had all these, we had at least 3 or 4 scripts that Julian had already written when we shut down. And 4 months of off, 3-4 months.
Really 5.
Right.
We shut down mid-March, and we didn't go back till the very end of September, so 5, 6 even.
So I would take I would just take pages out from the script, and because I lived during the pandemic with my 3 little grandsons, and the house was always noisy. But every day I would go out walking and saying the lines and learning the scenes, so that, you know, because I just felt my actor's mechanism was like, I can't just let this go. I need to, you know, say these words. So if anything, I would say by the time we started shooting, I was a little over-prepared. Like the director had to say, just calm down. You can just throw this away, you know. So yeah, that was my funny.
I was a replacement, so the job came to me during the pandemic, which means had it happened while everyone was shooting or just starting, I would have had no time to prepare. And so I ended up then getting to do a little bit, like diving back into Henry James and Edith Wharton, which are writers that I love, and my husband showing me all the films that were apropos, because he loves to cultivate our film watching. And so how we spent the pandemic, was watching a film every night in our basement that we chronicled on Twitter. And and so I had more time to dream than I would have had about it before we started. And I think our costume department also had time to do more hand beading and hand embroidery. Most of that stuff was going to be printed, and instead they were able to really do that work. And so when you start to see that stuff up close, it was just extraordinary because they had more time. And I would like to also point out that they build all of the background costumes. They don't rent any of them. They have a contract where they're building them and then renting them out. And so you'll be standing across from an extra and you'll be like, what is that brooch? That is an extraordinary, what is that? And you're completely distracted by everything that's around you because of the level of detail. So it gave our costume department a lot of time to work as well, which was good for me because the costume shifted a little bit when I came on. And then they shifted a lot because I was real pregnant.
I think this is a job that all of us here would always have treated like with great reverence, and I think we understood, each one of us when we were cast, like what a precious project this was to be a part of. But I there's no way that I can exaggerate enough how, having spent all those months inside alone, not performing, but just, alone, or alone with our families, or alone with our whoever, to get to come back, to get to like creep out of the dark back into the light and be with each other and see each other. And it's a cast that many of us, I would say most of us, knew each other from before. And we certainly, even if we didn't know each other personally, we knew each other's work. So I think it just, if anything, it enhanced and grew the preciousness and the sanctity with which we held this particular project, and even the idea of being able to go somewhere every day and act.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I felt that very much, and I would just add that when in March, when we all shut down, and then it was like, oh yeah, it really seemed like this was never going to happen again. Like it didn't. I couldn't imagine how a set was ever going to work, and it really. And then the fact that everybody in our industry got together and figured out a way to do it safely, I'll never not marvel at that. I mean, it really was like a model, I think, almost globally, for how a bunch of people with sort of varying interests and various roles in an industry can actually come and take care of each other if they all come to the table and kind of earnestly endeavor to do so. And so, yeah, I was amazed by that the unions were able to pull that off. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I felt about the pandemic, and because this was my first, I feel like I lost steam in that time, because I was in this moment where I was like just graduating, and I was like, here we go, this is it, we're on the up, like we're going, and it just stopped, and I didn't know what it was even going to be like because I had no experience doing it. And I thought similarly to Morgan that maybe it wasn't going to happen. So I was looking into other career options, and I was thinking about freelance advertising, and I'm serious, because I always think about that in the back of my mind. I just do. And I got to set, and after having spent like 6 months in sweatpants and not thinking about acting and thinking about pivoting, I was all of a sudden on an HBO set in a corset, a bustle, with Cynthia Nixon, Christine Baranski, and I was shitting myself. Like I really was so scared, and like the whole process was a blackout, to be honest. Like maybe 2/3 of the way through I remember it, but it was a real challenge. So I'm aside from like exactly what Denée said about, I had so many questions about Marion and Peggy's relationship with the script as it was back in March 2020, and I think I woke up as a white person when George Floyd protests started happening. I was like, oh, I should probably do something too and say something if I have a feeling about this. And, you know, I think that was a really valuable time that we had to examine that relationship and its evolution. And yeah, that's my answer about the pandemic.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because we have our pairings here. Like we have Peggy and Marion and we have the Russells and we have the sisters here. So I wanted to hear from each of the pairs about developing your relationship because I feel like I heard Bertha when I was asking about favorite characters come out. But what I love about the Russells is like, y'all are in it together. Y'all are a power couple. The ambition is real. So I'd love to hear from y'all first of like, did you guys get together and write a backstory or like, you know, write each other love letters? I don't know.
Yes, we did.
Practice kissing.
As all good actors should. Yeah, we.
I learned that from Christine Baranski.
Yeah.
So I have extensive journaling about it,
Mm-hmm.
which I shared with Morgan, and then he wrote on my journal and gave it back to me. And we have a whole
Share it back and
series of
forth.
journals.
Yes.
Dreaming together, we would have the same dreams, and then we would write to each other.
Very
I
connected.
think Morgan and I both recognized that the marriage was really sexy. And it was sexy because of respect. And that's a little sad that people find respect so sexy because it's so sorely lacking in the world we're living in. And so, unfortunately, it was a bit of a bomb to us to be able to revel in that dynamic in a world that's really deeply appreciative of it right now. And Morgan and I knew each other a little bit. I think we kind of were coming at it the same way, trying to stay open and playful and try to feel like a person walking. Like, what does a person do? And how do you open a door when you can't lift your arm higher than this? And, you know, there were a lot of challenges that we approached with humor,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
And he's very attractive. He made it very easy.
Oh, come on.
We knew that Christine and Cynthia lived in this house, and they told us none of the other houses have been written yet, except for the house across the street. And I thought you guys were like a married couple of background actors. And I asked you, do you know who lives in the other houses? Is it true they haven't been written yet? And you said, dear, have they been written yet? No, dear, they haven't been written yet. And I thought you were a married couple. I didn't know you were the stars.
Method acting is basically what we just learned about. I love that.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. The only other thing I have to add to that is like we had done a really weird short film together, like a truly bizarre thing.
I cut out his tongue.
He cut
I
out my
cut out
tongue.
his tongue. You know, he
wait.
splashes me with hot butter. It's a horrifying
Yeah.
short film. You should look it up. It's great.
It's called Great Choice if you can get a chance. And it was directed by Robin Commissar, who's like very brilliant, I think. But it was extremely weird. And so we'd done something that was very like, okay, I guess we're doing this today already. And I think it was, you know, it's like when you've done something, you know, sort of weird like that, it's sort of maybe easier just to throw yourself into something. Yeah. And I also think, you know, we both have marriages with like dynamic partners that we're both sort of very engaged with, like intellectually and interested in what it is to be married and what it is to be involved in like what into the power dynamic between a couple and what two people can accomplish together and how they can support each other and sort of like help each other's ambitions be realized and like that is something I think we're both actively engaged in our real lives. And so
I would absolutely switch with you. I love Rebecca so much.
I think I actually might also switch with you. I think Tracy is like one of the more charming people I've ever encountered in my life, but don't tell him I said. But anyway, yeah, like so I think there's something of that. And also I also will just say, like, you know, I was very happy to get to work with you. I just admire you so much. I think you're so brilliant. And so there is also that real foundation of like, I just respect the shit out of you and just want to see you succeed. You know what I mean? Like there's that. So
I love that.
Mutual.
yeah, it's fun. It's fun to come to work with Carrie Coon.
And then with Peggy and Marion, I wasn't sure for the first episode, like we see y'all interact and then I'm like, who knows if they're going to continue this friendship, but it blossoms and it develops. So I'd love to hear about y'all on working on that together on set.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot, just sort of how to navigate this Black woman and white woman becoming not only in the same space, but then like truthfully becoming friends and what we needed to hit. And so that story happened a lot, but just as two actors, it's been such a gift because we're in such similar places in our careers and in our lives that
I mean, you have Tony nominations, so let's be clear.
Okay, but also a protagonist in an HBO series right out of drama school. It's not a bad look. But I do feel that like we were able to sort of like speak actor in a similar way. And, we were surrounded by so many legends. Like I wasn't necessarily going to be like, hey, Audra, want to do some text work together? With Louisa, I really felt like we could just, because everything moves so fast. And so sometimes, the director is worried about the lighting and we're sort of left to fend for ourselves. And so I felt really thankful. And so I think some of the chemistry that I hope you see is also like our chemistry because we spent time getting to do that stuff in a way that I found really helpful.
Yeah, we're both kind of perfectionists a little bit to a fault, myself to a fault. But yeah, that's definitely true. And we talked about the scene with the shoes as originally written. I don't know if you guys.
Ooh.
Yeah. So as originally written, that was sort of patched up pretty quickly after it happens. And Denée and I were like, I feel as though it would be a bigger issue and they would maybe, like there would be a larger rift that then would earn where we get to later episodes. So that kind of intense exchange that we have on the street outside of her house after that happened was added after we had this conversation together and then with Julian. And yeah.
To just really let it be a fight.
Yeah.
To let, not to have to smooth it over. And
right.
It was a lot of like protecting you as not a bad person instead of like, well, what if we let her mess up and let Peggy get pissed about it and let Marion make it right? And then maybe they can actually build trust. And so I think that paid off for sure.
It felt authentic to a friendship, yeah. And then the sisters. Hello. You two are iconic.
Go ahead.
I'll say it. So tell us about it.
Because we got a backstory.
Right. So in 1983, Christine and I did this play together where she played my mother, and it was, and she won a Tony Award for it. And she had just returned from her honeymoon, and she became pregnant with their first child, and it was an amazing job. But it was also like an amazing moment, I think, in each of our lives.
And you were a student.
And I was in 12th. I can't remember if I was in 11 or 12th. I think I was in 12th. It was 83. 83. Yes, 12th grade.
Right.
And I just, I have always, when you're a kid, which I was, as a child actor, started when I was like 11, 12. So you always, but particularly, as a girl, you always look at the women around you that you're working with. And for me, I really looked not just at the actresses who I admired their performances, but also who I admired their lives, right? That as a prototype of how to actually, be an actress, not just and succeed and do good work, but actually have all the things you want, have a great marriage and have a great, family life and children, and that you actually prioritize. And so there is no actress that I've worked with in all my 45 years that I think does that better than Christine. So, it was a tremendous opportunity to get to work with her again after all these years, and we stayed in touch and stuff. But and Christine was, I think, really the person who coined this, but that Ada and Agnes are really like a married couple themselves, And so us knowing each other for so long and liking each other and loving each other so much, I think was enormously helpful in terms of being able to be the people who finish each other's sentences, but also be totally the opposites who attract.
And also, I played your mother, I think that Agnes has a maternal relationship towards Ada. I'm the big sister, listen to me. And we just had such a jump start on this. I mean, the idea that I would be in a show with Cynthia and that we'd be, it was just too wonderful. It was just one of those gifts. And so we already had a head start. And then, you know, the admiration is mutual, and we both have like just really irreverent senses of humor. So the, you know, that banter, I think it just, you know, it's just felt natural and great. And I do have trouble being that mean to you because I love you, but you know, it's been really, really delightful.
And we were both Tom Stoppard wrote the play that we were in, and we were both at his opening night last week or whenever that was. I can't even remember anymore. But did you somebody said maybe he said it? No, somebody told me that Tom said, It really freaks me out that Cynthia and Christine are working together, and I turn on the television and they're there together, and I can't understand it.
That's too good. I love that. So I was told earlier, too, since we're at the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, that one of the questions they always ask at these panels is, what project you got your SAG card from? So we're going to do that. Oh, dear.
This will open up a can of worms.
Let's.
Mine was a pro high fructose corn syrup commercial.
Oh.
Sugar is sugar. Your body can't tell the difference. Comes back to haunt me every few years. To be fair, it was a national commercial, and I was broke. You got to make money. I did lose my car on the way down, so all that money went to buying another car.
Okay. Oh my God.
And paying my dues. And it was an extraordinary and unusual trip to Decatur, Illinois, which is too long a story to tell here. But yeah, every now and then somebody says, do you still believe that high fructose corn syrup is the same as sugar? And they actually got sued over that commercial, for the language in it. And the commercial is cited in the lawsuit. So I'm proud to be part of that.
History.
Part of American jurisprudence.
Do you really want me to follow that? Because this is going to sound.
I know it's hard.
Are you ready, Carrie? Mine was doing a movie called Playing for Time, which was about the women's orchestra in Auschwitz. So, you know, there's just a big trajectory here on how you can get your SAG card. I was I was a Ukrainian accordionist. And it was Vanessa Redgrave and Jane Alexander, and it was, you know, it was wonderful and beautiful, but listening to I should have been the last one. Anyway, how did you get it?
I think it was 1978. And I did an after-school special. They used to have after-school specials, which were 1-hour little movies for kids. And it was called The 7 Wishes of a Rich Kid. And it was about a kid who has a fairy godmother who was played by Butterfly McQueen, who comes to him through the TV and grants him a certain number of, 7 wishes. And I did that, and I was not a member of the union. I was one of his wishes, I guess. He was in love with me. And then I got a movie called Little Darlings, which was starring Tatum O'Neal and Christy McNichol and Matt Dillon and Armand Desante. And I was so thrilled because I was a huge Tatum O'Neal fan. And SAG didn't think that I was professional enough yet. And so they didn't want to give me my SAG card, even though I had auditioned for this job for 5 times or something crazy. So I had to take my 12-year-old self into the SAG offices and talk to them and be respectful and about how serious I was about being an actress. And then
and now look at you.
Right.
I don't really want to. The year after I graduated from college, this guy that
What year was that, Morgan?
2002. And this guy that my dad knew was like, he had a friend who was making a movie. And my dad was like, well, my son's an actor. And so this guy was like, well, he can be in the movie. And so I had this big part in this movie that I had, and I was like, I had done theater in college and all my life, but I'd never been in front of the camera at all. And it was like, catastrophically bad in this film. And I would say it's not an entirely successful film as a whole, but I played a guy with like a weird sexual fetish for flannel. If that gives you any like flavor of the project.
Too close.
But I did get my SAG card, so yeah, there we go.
Sorry, wow. I think I got it from, it's either this show or I did a scene in a pilot that in June after I graduated called Gone Hollywood, and it was about the start of CAA back in the early 80s. And they were like, okay, I auditioned for it, and they were like, okay, we're giving her this role as long as she dyes her hair blonde. And at the time, I had like grown out all my natural hair. And I was like, of course, I'll do anything for a part. I'm desperate I want that. And so I did dye my hair, but fried it completely, ruined my hair, and the show never got picked up. So I think that's when I got my SAG card.
I'm pretty sure I got mine from the Pillsbury commercial I did when I first moved to the city, and I was like, it was like, I don't know, 30 seconds, and my family sent it around all of Florida. It was like, and I had never done a commercial before, and so we got there. I hadn't had breakfast, but we were eating these pieces of cake. And so I didn't know you were supposed to take like tiny TV bites. And so I was just housing this cake. And by like hour 8, I was on like piece 5. I had to go to the bathroom. I got sick. I had to throw up. And then I had to like keep filming. I didn't know any better. The cake was delicious, and then it was bad. But it paid my rent for like a year and a half. So
there you
it
go.
was worth it.
Those were better than I could have imagined when I started that question. That's amazing. We are at time, so thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to the cast for being here today.